7:18 in the morning, Santa Fe. My only son arrived with a smile, a contract, and a deadline that sounded like a threat. By sunset, my deed was gone, just not where he thought. When he came back with investors, all he found was an empty safe, a steaming kettle, and one envelope with 5 words that froze the room. Check the county recorder. Now. What he saw there changed everything. My name is Evelyn Harrow. I am 62 years old, a widow, and I live alone in Santa Fe, New Mexico. My kitchen is my sanctuary, painted in the warm, terracotta shade of the cliffs, and the morning sun always hits the copper kettle just right. The kettle was steaming, its whistle a low hum, when the front door opened without a knock. It was my son, Dylan. He is 37, the founder of a company he calls Blue Mesa Ventures, and he carries himself with an urgency that always leaves a draft in his wake. He strode in, not as a guest, but as an inspector, placing a thick manila folder onto my butcher block. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't wait for the tea. "Mum, I need you to listen," he said, tapping the folder. "This is a bridge investment opportunity. Blue Mesa is expanding, but our cash flow is tight. I need you to sell the house." The words just hung there, sucking the warmth from the room. Sell the house. My house. "Dylan, what are you talking about?" "It's simple," he said, his voice lowering into that patient, explanatory tone he uses when he thinks I'm being slow. "It's just paperwork. We sell, liquefy the asset, and I use the capital to close the deal. I'll buy you a condo, a smaller place. This house is too big for you anyway." He opened the folder. Contracts. Dozens of pages of dense black text. "And it has to be today," he added, looking at his watch. "I have partners meeting me here tonight. They need to see the funds are secured." That was when I heard it. The echo. It was the same cadence, the same manufactured calm my late husband, Arthur, used whenever he was about to corner me. It was the sound of a closing door. My eyes scanned the top page Dylan had pushed toward me, and a phrase jumped out from the legalese irrevocable collateral. My breathing hitched. This wasn't a sale. It was a sacrifice. His phone buzzed on the counter. Screen up. Cara. His wife. The name flashed once, twice, then a third time. A rapid succession of texts. Dylan glanced at it, his jaw tightening, and flipped the phone over with a sharp snap. The hidden debt. I could feel it, heavy and sour as spoiled milk. He saw me looking at the phone and mistook my focus. He leaned in, placing his hand over mine on the counter. His skin was cold. "Mum, you live here all alone. It's too much property for one person. Think of what this means for me, for the family. Don't disappoint me." There it was. The final turn of the screw. Don't disappoint me. Arthur's favourite weapon. I pulled my hand back slowly and used it to draw the collar of my cardigan closed. I looked at the papers, then up at his face. So familiar and yet so foreign in its predatory focus. "And if I don't sell?" I asked. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the air. The smile vanished. His eyes went flat, the practiced charm dissolving into sheer, cold impatience. "Then there will be consequences," he said. "For everyone. The people I'm involved with. They don't take no for an answer. You need to do this." I looked down at the contract, at the line waiting for my signature. I let the silence stretch, just long enough. Then I nodded, a small, tired gesture. I need to think about it. Dylan, this is a lot. Let me read the papers. Relief washed over his face. He thought he'd won. He thought I was folding, just like I always had. Fine, he said, patting the folder. Read them. But I need the signature by 5. I'll be back tonight with my partners. He walked out as abruptly as he'd come in, the front door closing with a definitive click. I stood alone in the kitchen, the kettle still steaming. The only sound was the ticking of the clock over the stove. My gaze was fixed on the folder he'd left. My hand, hidden in the pocket of my cardigan, found the small, digital voice recorder. My thumb slid the switch. A tiny red light blinked once, then held steady. The sound of Dylan's car engine faded, leaving a silence that felt heavier than before. The contracts sat on my counter, a monument to a lifetime of yielding. This wasn't new. It was just the end game. It started 10 years ago, when Arthur died and left behind a legacy of bad investments and tangled debts. Dylan, barely 27, stepped into the chaos. I mistook his aggression for competence. He learned Arthur's playbook by heart, mastering the precise cadence of manipulation. Press the bruise, make the request, promise the world, and forget the details. It began with $10,000, just to consolidate the estate attorneys. Mum. It was gone in a week. 6 months later, it was $50,000. A seed investment for Blue Mesa Ventures. This is our future. The last time, 3 years ago, was the worst. $120,000, the remainder of my liquid savings from my own family. The company will fold if I don't cover this gap. Mum, you'll get it all back, plus interest. I never saw a cent. The interest was paid in silence, in the dwindling of my own security. Now, my life at 62 is a series of quiet, solitary routines. My days are marked by the snap of my weekly pill organizer, the careful budgeting of medical copays, the rustle of receipts from the pharmacy. I spend my afternoons in the high desert sun, tending my garden. It's not a soft garden. It's full of cacti and resilient succulents, things that know how to survive on their own, things that wear their armor openly. I understood them. For decades, I was bound by an invisible chain, forged by Arthur and inherited by Dylan. It was the simple, terrible sentence, good mother's sacrifice. A good mother doesn't ask questions. A good mother absorbs the blow. A good mother provides the bridge, even if she has to light herself on fire to do it. And I had. Over and over. I remembered the stacks of paper Dylan brought. Years ago. Just a temporary power of attorney. Mum? So I can handle the old utility accounts and talk to the bank about Arthur's remaining debts. It'll make your life easier. I had signed, eager to be easier, eager to be the good mother. I signed without reading the fine print. I signed, and in doing so, I handed him the key. But the chain had started to rust. Last Tuesday. A call came from a number I didn't recognize. Mesa Ridge Credit Union. A polite woman asking about a series of unusual transactions on my Visa card. I don't have a Visa with your bank. I had told her. Ma'am, it was opened 6 months ago using your social security number. It's currently at its $20,000 limit. A coldness had spread from my stomach outward. I'd blamed identity theft. A nameless, faceless criminal. Now, looking at the words, irrevocable collateral, I knew the face. I knew the name. My gaze drifted past the kitchen window to the bougainvillea clinging to the adobe wall. For 5 years, It had been dormant, just dry, thorny sticks. Then, this spring, it had exploded in a riot of fuchsia blooms, a violent, beautiful declaration of life. It was blooming impossibly late, defying the season. It was not done. Neither was I. The fog of manipulated guilt began to clear, replaced by something cold and sharp. An old name surfaced in my mind, a name I hadn't needed in decades. A friend from college, back when I was Evelyn Hart, before I became Mrs. Arthur Harrow. A woman who ate fine print for breakfast. Sabrina Cole. The sharpest lawyer I ever knew. Known in Albuquerque circles, but fiercely, wonderfully discreet. I walked to the phone, leaving Dylan's contracts untouched on the counter. I found the number for Lock and Bramble online. When the receptionist answered, I didn't ask. I stated, I need to speak with Sabrina Cole. It's Evelyn Harrow. It is an emergency. Perhaps my voice conveyed the decades of suppressed panic finally breaking through, or perhaps Sabrina simply remembered me. I was in her downtown office in under an hour. Sabrina hadn't softened with age. She'd solidified. She was all sharp angles and quiet. Expensive tailoring. She poured me a water I didn't drink and gestured to the small digital recorder I'd placed on her desk. Play it. I did. Dylan's voice filled the insulated room, calm, reasonable, and utterly reptilian. Don't disappoint me. Consequences. While it played, Sabrina read the contract he'd left. Her eyes, magnified slightly by her glasses, moved with terrifying speed. She didn't react until the recording finished, clicking off into silence. Well, Evelyn, she said, tapping the contract. Your son isn't just trying to sell your house. He's trying to acquire you. She pointed to the irrevocable collateral clause. This is a cross-collateralization agreement, tied to a lifelong personal guarantee. The sale is just the entry fee. He's not after the house's value. He's after its equity, which he wants to leverage against your entire estate. If you sign this, he doesn't just get the house. He gets your signature as a blank check for every bad debt Blue Mesa Ventures ever incurs. Forever. My blood ran cold. He said his partners? His partners are sharks, and he's chumming the water with you. Sabrina was already typing, her screen flashing with public records. He's been busy. She turned the monitor. Santa Fe County Recorder's Office. Look, 2 liens filed against your property in the last 8 months. One for $30,000, one for $50,000, both from entities I've never heard of. I never signed those. I know, Sabrina said. The signatures are digitized, good forgeries, probably scanned from those old power of attorney papers you mentioned. He's been bleeding you dry in small increments, testing the system. This contract. She tapped the folder again. This is him going for the artery. She stopped typing and folded her hands. It was the calmest, most frightening display of competence I had ever seen. Here is what we do now, not in an hour. Now. This is a chess game. Evelyn. And he just made a fatal error. He gave you a deadline. That means we have 1, 2, and ours is faster. She laid out the plan. It wasn't a discussion. It was a procedure. First, she said, hitting a button on her phone. We revoke. My paralegal is drafting a revocation of all prior powers of attorney, effective immediately. We will file it, and we will send a copy via courier to your son's office. Simultaneously, I am calling a contact at the Santa Fe PD. We are filing a report for elder financial exploitation. Second, Your money. You are going to leave here, go to your bank, and pull everything. Then you're going to High Desert Federal. It's a small credit union. They know me. You will open a new account under a new trust name. Your current accounts are compromised. While you do that, I will be placing a full credit freeze with all 3 bureaus: Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. Your credit profile becomes a steel vault. Third, she said, leaning forward, is the house. This is the masterstroke. He wants you to sell it to him. You can't. Because in about 2 hours, you won't technically own it. Sabrina, I don't want to lose my home. You won't, she said, a rare, thin smile appearing. You will retain what is called a life estate. You have the undeniable, irrevocable right to live in that house until the day you die. No one can evict you. But the title, the remainder interest, we are transferring that. Today, we are deeding it to the Sunrise Land Trust, a private trust I use for exactly this purpose. Its director is Maeve Quill. On paper, she is a stranger. She is the someone else. The value of the house, the asset Dylan is trying to leverage, will be legally out of your hands. He can't force you to sell what you no longer fully possess. She stood up. I've added one more thing, a non-encumbrance clause. Even your life estate portion cannot be used as collateral. The house is poisoned. Evelyn. At least, to people like your son. It was ruthless. It was beautiful. At 3:40 in the afternoon, a mobile notary met us in a sterile conference room. I signed the revocation. I signed the new trust documents. I signed the deed transfer. My hand was perfectly steady. Sabrina's paralegal, a young man who looked like he ran marathons, was waiting. He took the signed deed and sprinted out of the office. At 4:12 p.m., Sabrina's phone chimed with an email. It's done, she said. The deed is recorded. Stamp number, time, and date. In the eyes of Santa Fe County, your house belongs to the trust. He is too late. I returned to the house just before 5 o'clock. The adrenaline from Sabrina's office had sharpened my focus into a cold, clear point. There was no time for emotion, only logistics. My first stop was the study. The old floor safe was hidden behind a framed print of the desert. I spun the combination lock, the tumblers clicking in the quiet room. Inside was dust, Arthur's old watches, my grandmother's pearls, and the original paper deed to the house, now a historical document. Nothing more. I took the jewelry and a few sentimental papers, stuffing them into my overnight bag. I left the heavy steel door of the safe slightly ajar, inviting inspection. In the kitchen, I filled the copper kettle, the same one Dylan had seen that morning. I set it on the stove and turned the flame to high. I wanted the whistle to be the first thing they heard, a shrill, piercing welcome. Sabrina had emailed me a file. I printed it. It was a copy of Dylan's original contract, the one with the irrevocable collateral clause. But this version was clean. No signatures, no notary stamp, just blank lines waiting for a pen. I placed it on the kitchen counter, slightly askew, as if I had been interrupted while considering it, a piece of bait for his hungry ego. While I was at Sabrina's, a technician had arrived at my house. A new doorbell camera was now affixed to the adobe wall by my front door. I checked the connection on my phone. The high-definition, wide-angle view of my empty porch was perfect. I tapped the screen, shared the access feed. Sabrina Cole's name lit up. She was watching. Sabrina's plan required redundancy. I had a pre-prepared envelope, addressed to myself at my own home. Inside was the fully executed revocation of power of attorney, dated and timed by Sabrina's office. I drove to the post office 2 blocks away. Certified mail, return receipt requested, I told the clerk. He stamped the green slip. The federal postmark was another nail in Dylan's coffin. A time-stamped, verifiable legal fact that I had revoked his power before he arrived with his partners. I returned home. The kettle was beginning to hiss. I took one of my heavy, cream-coloured envelopes. On the front, I wrote nothing. Inside, I placed a single sheet of paper. On it, I wrote only the instructions Sabrina had given me. The receipt number from the county recorder's office. Check recorder file number 2025-048819. It was public record. It was an invitation to the truth. I placed the envelope in the exact center of the dining room table. I picked up my phone and called the non-emergency line for the Santa Fe Police Department. I asked for the Economic Crimes Unit. I was transferred to a Lieutenant Mariah Ortega. Her voice was dry and professional. "My name is Evelyn Harrow," I said, my voice perfectly steady. "I am filing a report regarding elder financial exploitation. My son, Dylan Harrow, has been attempting to coerce me into signing fraudulent documents, and I have discovered forged liens against my property." I paused. He informed me this morning that he is bringing partners to my home this evening to secure the deal. He mentioned consequences if I refuse. I am afraid of what they might do when they find I cannot cooperate. Ortega was quiet. "Ma'am, are you safe right now?" "I will be," I said. "I will not be at the residence. My lawyer, Sabrina Cole, has the details and access to my front door camera. I just wanted this on the record. I wanted you to know before they arrived." She took the address. She took Sabrina's number. A file was officially open. My phone buzzed. A text from Sabrina. "Maeve Quill is confirmed. Sunrise Land Trust is secure." Maeve. The someone else. A woman I had never met, who now held the title to my life's anchor, all to keep it safe from my own blood. The kettle began to shriek. It was time. I picked up the small overnight bag I had packed a change of clothes, my medication, my knitting. I walked out the back door, through my cactus garden. I did not look back. My friend Elena, from my knitting group, lived at the old adobe mission church 2 miles away, serving as its caretaker. She was expecting me. She had a small, quiet room ready for me. I would stay there for 2 nights. As I pulled my car away from the curb, I imagined Dylan arriving. I imagined him seeing the fake contract, the empty safe, and the single, cream-coloured envelope. The sound of the boiling kettle screaming into the empty house. In the spare, quiet room at the adobe church. My phone was my only connection. The screen lit up at 8:34 p.m., a notification. Motion detected at my front door. I opened the live feed. A dark, expensive SUV had parked at my curb, idling. Dylan got out. Not alone. He was flanked by 2 men I'd never seen. They moved with a heavy, impatient energy. One, tall and thin, was smoking. The cherry of his cigarette a bright red dot in the night vision. The other was broad, wearing a jacket too warm for the Santa Fe evening. They smelled of stale smoke and arrogance, even through the tiny speaker. Dylan used his key. The sound of the lock turning felt like a violation. The camera's microphone picked up their voices, sharp and echoing from inside the house. The kettle's screaming. The tall one. Rafe said. She's here, Dylan replied, his voice tight. Mum, where are you? Silence, broken only by the kettle's whistle. I heard their footsteps move to the kitchen. She left the contract, Dylan said, a note of relief. See, she was going to sign. Where's the safe? The broad one. Milo demanded. More footsteps. Then, the sound of the safe door being pulled open, the metallic groan. It's empty, Dylan said, his voice rising. The safe is empty. What about the table? Rafe's voice was sharp. There's an envelope on the table. I watched, holding my breath. A long pause. I pictured Dylan tearing it open, seeing the single line of text. I heard the frantic tapping of fingers on a phone screen. Then, a roar. It was Dylan. No, she. She sold it. It's gone. The title was transferred at 4:12 p.m. to Sunrise Land Trust. Who the hell is Sunrise Land Trust? She sold us out. She sold us out. He burst out the front door, his face contorted in the camera's light. He glared up at the empty porch roof, as if he could see me. Mom. I pressed the microphone icon on my screen. My voice, calm and clear, projected out of the small doorbell speaker into the night. My house is not for sale, Dylan. It was never for sale to you. The shock on his face was immediate. He stumbled back. The two men came out onto the porch. Rafe, the tall one, looked around, his eyes scanning, and then they locked directly onto the camera lens. He knew. He smirked. There are other ways to collect, old lady, he said, his voice low and clear, a perfect recording. We know where you live. As if his threat had summoned them, blue and red lights washed over the street. A Santa Fe police cruiser pulled up behind the SUV. A neighbor, God bless them, must have heard the shouting and called 911. An officer stepped out. I watched as Dylan tried to switch back to his reasonable son persona, explaining it was a family misunderstanding. Rafe and Milo hung back, trying to look bored. The officer took their names. She was firm. I heard her say, "We received a call about a threat." Rafe laughed. "We were just leaving." "We'll add this to the active report," the officer said, looking at Dylan. "Lieutenant Ortega will be interested. Have a good night, sir." They were being dismissed. Dylan's face was pale with fury. He looked back at the camera one last time, his mask of civility completely gone. "I'll sue you," he shouted. "I'll break this trust. I'll have you declared incompetent." I pressed the button again. My final word. "Talk to Sabrina, Dylan. Ask her to read you Article 4, the non-encumbrance clause." His mouth opened, then closed. He didn't know what that meant, but the legal certainty in my voice terrified him. He and his partners got back into the SUV, the doors slamming hard. I watched the taillights disappear. I stayed on the feed, watching my empty porch. My phone buzzed. A text from Sabrina. "Ortega got the report. Rafe's threat is on record. Well done." I watched the empty street until my screen timed out. Dylan's panic was a living thing. He had walked to the car not as a son, but as a cornered animal. His phone already to his ear. His voice yelling before the door even closed. The quiet of the adobe church was a necessary shield for the next 48 hours. While I sat with my knitting, my phone became a conduit for the battle I had outsourced. Lieutenant Ortega was fast. She took my formal, signed complaint about the forged signatures on the two liens. With that, She served a subpoena on Mesa Ridge Credit Union. The bank's compliance department, eager to avoid liability, confirmed it within hours 3 accounts had been opened in my name over the last year, all linked to a P.O. box Dylan rented. All were now maxed out and delinquent. Sabrina moved in parallel. She went to an emergency judge first thing in the morning. "We've filed for a temporary restraining order," she told me over the phone, her voice crisp. "It prohibits Dylan, Mr. Rafe, and Mr. Milo from contacting you, coming within 500 feet of your home, or attempting any financial transactions in your name. The threat Rafe made on your camera feed was the judge's deciding factor. A TRO, a piece of paper that declared my son a legal threat. While the order was being served, Sabrina's forensic accountant started digging. Blue Mesa Ventures was a house of cards. The money I'd loaned him years ago was gone, funneled through 6 shell companies. The trail always ended at the same destination, a holding LLC registered to Rafe. Dylan wasn't his partner, he was his mark, feeding Rafe's operation to stay afloat. And now he was feeding me to Rafe. I also spoke to Maeve Quill, the director of the Sunrise Land Trust. Her voice was warm, grounded, and full of a calm fury I recognized. "Sabrina and I started this trust 10 years ago," Maeve explained. "My own grandmother was convinced by her son to sell her home for pennies on the dollar to cover his gambling debts. She died in a state-run facility. Sunrise exists to ensure that never happens to another woman. Your home is safe with us, Evelyn. It is an honor to guard it. The biggest break, however, came from the person I least expected, Kara. She called me from a blocked number, her voice a terrified whisper. "Evelyn, oh, thank God, I have to see you. Not at the church. Please. Alone." We met in the dry, dusty aisle of a hardware store, between the bags of concrete and the gardening tools. She looked terrible. Her eyes were red, and she flinched every time the store's loudspeaker crackled. "He's lost his mind," she whispered, clutching her purse. "He's been shouting for 2 days. He said you sabotaged him. He forged my name, Kara. He tried to give my house to those men." Her face crumpled. "I know. I thought it was just for expediency. That's what he always said." She was crying now, silent tears tracking through her makeup. "He did it a few times. Signed your name on a bank form, a utility transfer. He said it was just to manage your affairs so you wouldn't be bothered. I never thought, not like this." Then she pulled an envelope from her purse. I was on his laptop, trying to find our own bank statements. I found an email he sent to himself. It's a draft. A plan. She handed me a printed sheet. It was an email from Dylan to Kara, sent a week ago. My eyes scanned the text. It was a contingency plan. If I refused to sign the contract, his plan B was to use the old, fraudulent power of attorney to apply for an illegal reverse mortgage on my house, take the full lump sum, and disappear. He would have left me with the debt and a foreclosed home. I looked at Kara, this young woman tangled in my son's web. "He will destroy you along with himself," I said, my voice soft but firm. "He will not spare you. He will not spare your children." "What do I do?" she begged. I laid out my terms. "I will not see you or my grandchildren destitute. But this is my only offer. You take this." I pointed to the email. "And you go to your own lawyer. Not Sabrina. Yours. You file for separation. You secure your finances and your children. You cooperate fully. You do not warn him. I will protect you, but I will not protect him. And no one will ever involve those children in this. She nodded, stuffing the paper back in her purse. He's at the office. He's been there all day, trying to find a lawyer to break the trust. I called Sabrina the moment Kara was gone. I told her about the reverse mortgage email. That's it, Sabrina said, her voice dropping. That's not just coercion. That's conspiracy to commit fraud. He wrote it down. I heard her typing. I'm calling Ortega. This email, combined with the confirmed forgeries and Rafe's threat, gives her more than enough. It's time to stop investigating and start collecting. An hour later, Sabrina called back. Ortega got it. The judge signed the search warrant for the Blue Mesa Ventures office. They're on their way right now. The search warrant executed at the Blue Mesa Ventures office was not a subtle affair. Lieutenant Ortega's team catalogued everything. They found the high-resolution scanner used for the signatures. They found a box of blank, watermarked contract paper, identical to the one Dylan had left on my counter. In a locked drawer in his desk, they found 3 different fraudulent notary seals. It was not the office of a struggling entrepreneur. It was a factory for forgery. I had naively assumed this physical proof would be the end, that Dylan would collapse. I was wrong. Desperation did not make him repentant. It made him vicious. 2 days later, a process server found me at Elena's church. He served me papers. My son was suing me. He had hired a notoriously expensive law firm from Albuquerque. The suit was dizzying in its audacity. It claimed that I, Evelyn Harrow, was mentally incompetent, suffering from advanced delusions and paranoia. It alleged that I had been unduly influenced by my new, predatory lawyer, Sabrina Cole. He demanded the court nullify the transfer of my property to the Sunrise Land Trust and, in the ultimate grotesque inversion, appoint him as my legal guardian to protect my assets from my own instability. Sabrina read the filing with a look of cold satisfaction. He's overplayed his hand, she said, her voice flat. He just kicked the door wide open. We don't have to prove he's a criminal anymore. We just have to prove you're sane. Our counterfiling was a symphony of facts. First, my complete medical history from the last 5 years, showing a perfectly healthy 62-year-old woman. Second, the results of a 2-hour neuropsychological evaluation Sabrina had scheduled the day after Dylan's threat. The report concluded my cognitive functions were superior. Third, and most painfully, Sabrina submitted selected, notarized excerpts from my own private therapy journals, dating back 3 years. They detailed, in my own words, my consistent, long-term anxiety regarding Dylan's manipulation and his escalating financial demands. The court mandated a preliminary hearing. The day before we were due to appear, Dylan's expensive new attorney called Sabrina. He proposed a settlement. I sat in Sabrina's office, listening on speakerphone. My client is deeply concerned for his mother's well-being. The lawyer's smooth voice began. He is willing to be generous. If Ms. Harrow agrees to dissolve the trust and transfer the property to Blue Mesa Ventures, Mr. Harrow will provide a filial deposit of $50,000 into her account and oversee her living expenses personally. He was offering to bribe me with my own money. Sabrina muted the phone and looked at me. I leaned forward. She unmuted it. No, I said. The lawyer paused. I'm sorry. No. My counteroffer is this: Dylan signs a full confession of judgment for the money he stole via the fraudulent liens and the ghost credit cards. He pays restitution to all victims, and he agrees to a permanent, binding, no-contact order. If he does that, I will not stand in the way of his plea bargain with the district attorney. That, the lawyer said, his voice turning cold, is not a productive offer. It's the only one you will get, Sabrina replied, and ended the call. The ground shifted again that afternoon. Rafe, Dylan's menacing partner, had been arrested. It was completely unrelated. He was pulled over for speeding, and the patrol officer found an unregistered handgun in his car. As a convicted felon, Rafe was facing a significant, immediate prison term. He panicked. He told the police he had information. He wanted a plea deal. He proceeded to describe his entire elder home flipping operation, painting Dylan as his scout who identified vulnerable properties owned by relatives. With the criminal case solidifying, Sabrina made a calculated move. She, anonymously, briefed a reporter at the Santa Fe New Mexican. The story that ran on the front page didn't name me or Dylan. It was titled, "The Sunrise Shield: How a Local Land Trust Protects Seniors from Predatory Family Loans." It praised the work of Maeve Quill, turning my shield into a public symbol of protection. We met in court for the preliminary hearing. The judge, a stern woman who looked thoroughly unimpressed by Dylan's lawyer, had read everything: the suit, our counterfiling, the police report, and, I suspected, the morning paper. Dylan sat 10 feet away, refusing to meet my eyes. After his lawyer made a flimsy argument about scheduling, the judge silenced him. "I am setting a full trial date for 2 weeks from today," she announced, looking directly at Dylan. "And I am issuing a formal warning. I have read the police reports and the TRO. Any attempt by you, Mr. Harrow, to contact, harass, or intimidate the plaintiff, or any associated parties, including Ms. Cara Harrow, will be considered witness tampering. You will be remanded into custody immediately. Do you understand me?" Dylan, pale and shrinking in his suit, could only nod. The war was no longer in my kitchen. It was public. The courtroom was cold, all marble and fluorescent light, a stage set for a surgical procedure. I was the plaintiff. My son was the defendant. Sabrina began with the audio. My voice, small but clear, filled the room, followed by Dylan's. "Don't disappoint me." And then, his voice again, lower, more menacing. "Partners, consequences. They don't take no for an answer." Dylan's lawyer objected, prejudicial. He claimed the judge overruled him. "It speaks directly to the plaintiff's state of mind and the defendant's alleged coercion," she said. Next came the handwriting expert, a dry, meticulous man who placed magnified images of my real signature next to the ones on the 2 fraudulent liens. "The discrepancies are definitive," he stated, pointing to the screen. "The baseline alignment is inconsistent. The pressure is static, indicative of a digital scan. The E and the H are pixel for pixel identical across both documents, an impossibility in natural human writing. These are forgeries." Then, a representative from the Santa Fe County Recorder's Office, a young woman who seemed nervous but precise. She read from a time-stamped log. At 3:45 p.m., a revocation of power of attorney for Evelyn Harrow was filed. At 4:12 p.m., a quitclaim deed was recorded. transferring the remainder interest of the property to the Sunrise Land Trust, while retaining a life estate for Ms. Harrow. The filings were in perfect legal order. Dylan's lawyer tried to build his case of my incompetence. He spoke of my advancing age, my new isolation, and my sudden, erratic forgetfulness. Sabrina called our rebuttal witness the court-appointed neurologist, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s. I spent 2 hours with Ms. Harrow, the doctor said, reading from her report. Her cognitive assessment scores are not just normal. They are in the 92nd percentile for her age group. She is sharp, lucid, and demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of her financial situation. There is zero clinical evidence of incompetency. The foundation was set. Now. Sabrina brought out her weapon. The defendant's case, Sabrina addressed the judge, rests on the claim that he was acting out of concern for his mother to protect her from a house that was too big. We would like to introduce an email that illustrates the true nature of that concern. It was an email from Dylan to Rafe, recovered from the warrant. Dylan's lawyer objected violently, irrelevant, inflammatory. It is the definition of relevant, Your Honour. Sabrina countered. It goes to motive. The judge nodded. Aloud. Sabrina read the email aloud, her voice clear and devastating. She won't sign. The old-fashioned way is out. We'll have to go with Plan B. I'll use the POA to get her into the assisted living facility at Northridge for a respite stay. Once she's there, we claim cognitive decline, get the guardianship, and sell the house fast. She'll be too confused to fight it. A gasp went through the courtroom. I looked at Dylan. His face was bright red, a mask of pure rage. He stood up, knocking his chair back. She's lying, he screamed, pointing at Sabrina, then at me. You're lying. You turned her against me. That house is mine. Mr. Harrow. The judge's voice cracked like a whip. You will sit down and be silent. This is your final warning. One more outburst, and you will be in contempt. Dylan sank into his chair, breathing hard, his expensive lawyer whispering frantically in his ear. The judge looked exhausted. We will recess for lunch. Back at 2 p.m. I was in the hallway with Sabrina, my hands shaking, when my old, deactivated cell phone buzzed. I only kept it in my purse for its old contacts. A text message had, somehow, come through. It was from Dylan, but it wasn't for me. The text read, Cara, she's destroying us. This is not working. You need to go to the church, talk to her. Tell her you'll take the kids away if she doesn't stop this. You need to solve this permanently. Do it. He must have texted my old number by mistake, the one saved in his phone as Mom. I felt the blood drain from my face. It wasn't just an email. It was a current, active threat. I handed the phone to Sabrina. Her eyes widened. She turned and flagged down Lieutenant Ortega, who was standing by the door. Ortega read the text. Her expression turned to granite. She strode back into the courtroom, past the bailiff, and straight to the judge, who was still on the bench. We watched through the door. We saw Ortega show the judge my phone. The judge read it, and her face went dark. She beckoned to Dylan's lawyer. When the lawyer came back out, his face was ashen. The judge is revoking your client's bail on the criminal charges, Ortega said to him. No, wait. Dylan's lawyer sputtered. And, in this civil matter, Sabrina added, Her Honor is issuing an absolute, no exceptions, no contact order, effective immediately, and she is granting our request for increased witness protection. A bailiff stepped into the hallway and moved to stand behind Dylan. The trap had snapped shut. I did not return to my house. Not yet. I stayed in the quiet guest room at the Adobe Mission, under Elena's care. That evening, the night before the judge's final ruling, a rare storm swept across the desert. I sat on the covered porch, wrapped in a thick wool blanket, breathing in the sharp, electric scent of petrichor, the smell of rain on dry, thirsty earth. It smelled like cleansing. For decades, I had been taught to be the nice one, be compliant, be the shock absorber for the men in your life. My late husband, Arthur, had built his life on that expectation. He'd made disastrous deals, and I was the one who apologized, the one who smoothed things over with creditors, the one who shrank so he could retain his sense of importance. Dylan had watched, and he had learned. He expected me to be the same quiet, compliant bank he had always known. But that woman was gone. The rain was washing her away. The wind was cold. I picked up my phone and called Maeve Quill, the woman who legally held the title to my home, a woman I still had never met in person. "Evelyn?" she answered, her voice like warm gravel. "Maeve," I said, my voice quiet. "I have to ask, what happens if I lose tomorrow? What if the judge is compromised? Or Dylan's lawyers are better? What if he voids the trust?" There was a pause, not of hesitation, but of consideration. "We don't lose, Evelyn," she said firmly. "We just learn to lock the door tighter. If he breaks this trust, we build a new one, an ironclad LLC based in Delaware. We appeal, we tie him up in litigation until he has nothing left to pay his expensive lawyers. He is betting you will get tired and give in. We never get tired. This is what we do." Her resolve was a steel rod for my own spine. We were a we. I hung up and saw a new text. It was from Cara, from her new, private number. It was a screenshot of a bank transfer confirmation. A few minutes later, a message. "He tried to move the last of our joint funds, but my lawyer was faster. The account is frozen. The separation papers are signed." Another text followed. "I got the job. Rio Vista Charter School. It's just an administrative assistant, but it's a start. It has health insurance for the kids. Thank you. Evelyn." I closed my eyes, feeling a pang, not of pity, but of a shared, weary relief. She was getting out. The children would be safe. My phone rang again. "Sabrina." "Final check," she said. "I've reviewed the case law on undue influence versus elder protection. We're solid. The neuropsych evaluation is the firewall. His email about the nursing home is the cannon. And the text message threat, well, that's the final nail. Get some sleep. Evelyn, tomorrow. We just state the facts." As if summoned, my phone buzzed while I was still talking to her. A message from an unknown number. "You think a piece of paper stops us. You think you won. We know where you are. We know the church. Watch yourself." My hand tightened, but I felt no panic. "Sabrina, I just received an anonymous threat." I read it to her. I forwarded the screenshot to her and to Lieutenant Ortega. Ortega replied in less than 5 minutes. "The number is a burner, but the cell tower ping matches the location where Milo was last seen. We're adding witness intimidation and terroristic threats to his sheet. Thank you. Stay inside. I am dispatching a patrol car to sit outside the mission tonight. Just in case. A police car. For me." The threat barely registered. It felt distant, the buzzing of a fly on the other side of a thick glass window. The fear was gone, replaced by a profound, cold calm. I took out the small notebook I kept by the bed. I wrote 5 lines, just for myself. I am not a bridge. I am not a bank. I am not collateral. I am not his consequences. I am Evelyn. The wind picked up, coming down from the mountains. It struck the heavy copper wind chime Eleanor kept hanging from the rafters. The sound wasn't delicate. It was a deep, resonant thunk of metal on metal. A promise. A declaration. It was the sound of something standing its ground. It would not break. I slept. For the first time in more than a week, I truly slept. I woke before the alarm. The rain had passed. I walked back out to the porch in the pre-dawn dark. Slowly. The horizon began to bleed purple, then orange. The sun broke over the Sangre de Cristo mountains, and the first light hit the old adobe walls, turning them a deep, warm gold. I smiled. I felt calm. I felt ready. The court reconvened with a tension so thick it felt like the air pressure had dropped. The judge began by acknowledging a motion from the district attorney's office, which was overseeing the parallel criminal case. Information from the plea agreement of a Mr. Rafe, the judge announced, has been deemed relevant to motive in this civil matter. The prosecutor stepped up. He described Rafe's confession, a multi-state network specializing in flipping elders' homes, using relatives as finders to identify vulnerable targets. The courtroom was silent. Dylan wasn't just a desperate son. He was a component in a much larger, predatory machine. When the prosecutor sat, Sabrina rose. "Your Honor," she said, "the defendant's case rests entirely on his claim that he was protecting his mother from undue influence. We would like to demonstrate the nature of that protection." She played the body cam footage from the officer who had responded to the 911 call. The dark porch filled the screen. We heard Dylan shouting, "She sold us out!" Then, we saw Rafe step forward, stare directly into the camera, and sneer. "There are other ways to collect, old lady." "And," Sabrina continued, stacking the exhibits on the judge's bench, "we resubmit the time-stamped log from the county recorder. Revocation of power of attorney filed at 3:45 in the afternoon. Deed transfer recorded at 4:12 in the afternoon. My client had legally, fully, and irrefutably secured her property before the defendant and his associates arrived to coerce her." "Finally," Sabrina said, "the defendant claims this transfer was erratic and harmful. I would like to call Maeve Quill, the director of the Sunrise Land Trust, to explain the terms." Maeve, radiating a calm I now recognized as her primary weapon, was sworn in. "Ms. Quill," Sabrina asked, "what are the terms of this trust?" "Ms. Harrow retains a full life estate," Maeve said, her voice clear. "She has the absolute, protected right to live in her home until her death. It cannot be sold, leveraged, or encumbered. And upon her death, where does the property interest go? It transfers to an entity established by the trust," Maeve said. "The Martha Harrow Scholarship Fund." A ripple of confusion went through Dylan's side. He looked lost. Sabrina clarified. "Martha Harrow was Evelyn's mother, Dylan's grandmother." Maeve continued. "The fund is designated to provide housing grants and financial aid to women over the age of 60 who are re-establishing their lives after situations of financial abuse." The trap wasn't just legal. It was moral. I hadn't disinherited him. I had prioritized protecting women just like me, using his own grandmother's name. The judge had heard enough. She didn't recess. She put on her glasses and read her ruling from the bench. The defendant's petition to nullify the deed transfer is denied in its entirety. The court finds the transfer to the Sunrise Land Trust to be valid, sound, and executed by a fully competent individual. The temporary restraining order is now a permanent order of protection. Furthermore, the defendant, Mr. Dylan Harrow, will be held liable for all the plaintiff's legal fees and for civil restitution in the full amount of the fraudulent liens and credit card debts. It was over. Dylan sat, grey-faced, as his lawyer slumped. As the courtroom began to empty, Lieutenant Ortega and 2 officers stepped inside. They moved quietly to the back row, where Milo had been watching. "Milo," Ortega said, her voice low, "you are under arrest for witness intimidation and violating a no-contact order." As the cuffs clicked shut, Dylan watched. He was truly, finally, alone. He looked at me one last time, his eyes hollow with a lifetime of entitled rage. "You cut off the family," he whispered, a final, pathetic accusation. I looked at my son. "No, Dylan," I said, my voice steady, not loud, but clear. "I cut off the financial violence." Near the main doors, I saw Kara. She was holding a thin briefcase, her expression unreadable. She gave me one short, silent nod, and then slipped out into the street, walking away, independent. The children were safe. That afternoon, I went home. The house was quiet, the air still. I walked out onto my front porch, the sun warm on my face. In my hand, I held a small, painted ceramic sign. I hung it on the hook by the door. It read, "Sunrise not for sale." I went inside and filled the copper kettle. As the flame clicked on, the wind moved, and I heard the deep, resonant thunk of the wind chime outside. It was the sound of a lock, finally, firmly, engaging. I stood in my kitchen, in my house, and waited for the water to boil. Thank you so much for listening. Let me know where you're tuning in from in the comments so we can all connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story be heard by more people.